Welcome. My name is Viktor Schnurr. I am a senior consultant and trainer for the VDA QMC and have been supporting companies in quality management, process optimization, and lean management for more than 20 years. My areas of expertise include ISO 9001, automotive core tools, VDA 6.3 process audits, VDA 6.5 product audits, APQP, PPAP-PPF, maturity level assurance, and internal audits. As a certified process auditor according to VDA 6.3, internal quality auditor, and quality management representative, I am familiar with both the requirements of the standards and their practical implementation within organizations. In today's business world, it is often assumed that an ISO 9001 certificate is the only way to prove quality. However, a mature quality management system requires more than just a certificate on the wall. It is about genuine responsibility, lived effectiveness, and reliable evidence. Together, we will take a look today at how your company can demonstrate conformity with ISO 9001 through a professional supplier's declaration of conformity according to ISO IEC 17050. Let us begin a new approach to management responsibility without a traditional certificate. To give you a clear path forward, we have structured this presentation into 5 key areas. We will begin by looking at the initial situation and the fundamental misunderstandings surrounding certification today. It is vital to understand the underlying requirements of ISO 9001 before we move on. In the second part, we dive into the standards logic, specifically comparing the classic third-party certificate with the professional self-declaration profile under ISO IEC 17050. This sets the stage for our third section, where we evaluate suitability and the critical role of management responsibility. Not every organization is ready for this step, so we will discuss specific maturity criteria and the vital importance of internal audits. Following that, we will address the strategic side, identifying risks and opportunities while outlining our specific roadmap for implementation. Finally, we will cover the practical execution and communication phase. This includes our modular service packages, the procedural model, and how to effectively communicate your status to customers. Our red thread follows a logical progression from initial analysis and evaluation to the development of a robust audit and evidence system. This journey concludes with a formal management decision and the eventual self-declaration. This clear structure is designed to facilitate your navigation through these complex decision-making phases. By the end of this session, you will see how to move from basic compliance to a system where quality is a lived responsibility, supported by our expertise at every milestone. Let us take a closer look at the initial situation. Many of your companies have been ISO 9001 certified for years, perhaps even decades. Throughout this time, the certificate has served as a well-known and widely accepted proof of quality, often acting as a standard ticket for customer communication and tendering. However, as your management system reaches a higher level of maturity, a fundamental question often arises. Is the certificate itself still our primary goal, or has it become a matter of routine? In many cases, the focus shifts. We find that for mature organizations, the value lies not in the external stamp of approval, but in having an effective, verifiable, and accountable management system that truly drives the business forward. This marks the beginning of a strategic reassessment. On one side of the scale, we have the traditional certificate, which often brings a sense of routine and relies heavily on external proof. On the other side, we find true effectiveness, characterized by internal responsibility and deep verifiability. As the maturity of your quality management system increases, the balance should naturally tip toward this internal effectiveness. It is no longer just about confirming that you meet a standard. It is about taking full ownership of your processes. This shift from external confirmation to internal responsibility is a sign of a truly advanced organization. We are here to help you evaluate whether your focus has already moved from the ritual of certification toward the reality of lived quality, ensuring your management system provides the maximum strategic value. A common misunderstanding in the corporate world is the belief that without an ISO 9001 certificate, there is simply no serious quality management. This perspective is professionally short-sighted because it confuses a proof path with the actual cause of management success. We need to distinguish between the two clearly. Think of it like an iceberg. The certificate is merely the visible tip above the waterline, representing about 10% of the whole. It is a proof path that confirms conformity to third parties, but it is never the source of quality itself. The remaining 90%, the massive structure supporting everything below the surface, is your actual management system. This system arises from internal processes, dedicated leadership, regular audits, and lived responsibility. It involves tracking key figures, implementing corrective actions, and conducting thorough management reviews based on actual customer requirements. When we look at it this way, it becomes obvious that it is not the paper on the wall that makes quality effective. Instead, it is a managed system where everyone takes ownership. For a mature organization, the priority shifts from simply maintaining the visible tip to strengthening the substantial foundation beneath. A certificate can confirm that you have these structures in place, but the structures themselves must be lived and breathed every day by your team. By understanding this distinction, you move away from a routine-based ritual and toward a strategic management approach that focuses on the true mechanics of your business excellence. Building on this understanding, the central question for any forward-thinking management team is no longer just whether a certificate exists. Instead, the real question becomes, can we reliably prove our ISO 9001 conformity, its effectiveness, and our management responsibility? This shift in perspective is where true leadership begins. Management responsibility starts at the exact point where quality is no longer delegated to an external certificate. To achieve a credible self-declaration, we must look at a three-pillar model that serves as the foundation for sustainable proof. The first pillar is conformity, ensuring that all specific ISO 9001 requirements are fully met within your daily operations. The second pillar is effectiveness. This is not about intent, but about evidence. We look at audits, reviews, and specific key figures that provide undeniable proof that the system works. Finally, the third pillar is responsibility. Here, the management team is clearly and visibly accountable for the system's performance. A reliable self-declaration rests only on all three of these strong pillars simultaneously. If even one is missing, the entire structure of trust cannot stand. For example, you might have the processes in place, but without management responsibility, the system lacks the authority to drive real improvement. Our goal is to help you build this robust structure so that your declaration of conformity is not just a statement, but a reflection of a deeply rooted corporate culture that values transparency and results over simple formalities. To understand how this proof works in practice, we must examine what the ISO 9001 standard actually requires. It is often forgotten that the standard describes a quality management system that must be structured, traceable, and above all focused on effectiveness. The core of this system can be visualized as a wheel with 7 interconnected segments, each representing a vital area of the organization. At the center is your effective QMS, driven by leadership and a constant focus on customer orientation as defined in Chapter 5.1.2 of the standard. This isn't just a list of tasks, it's a cycle of process orientation and risk-based thinking where opportunities are identified and managed proactively. We then move into performance evaluation and continuous improvement, ensuring that the organization never stands still. All of this must be supported by documented information to ensure traceability. While a certificate is a possible way to prove these elements exist, The crucial factor remains your organization's internal ability to consistently meet these requirements over the long term. ISO 9001 demands the sustainable effectiveness of all these core areas. It is the organization that must deliver these results consistently, regardless of whether an external auditor is watching. By mastering these 7 segments, from leadership and processes to documented information, you create a system that is naturally compliant. This internal mastery is what makes a self-declaration possible and powerful, as it proves that you are not just following a standard, but truly managing your business for excellence. Now that we have explored the core requirements of ISO 9001, let us look at the specific framework that makes an alternative proof path possible. ISO IEC 17050 is the international standard that enables an organization to declare its own conformity to specified requirements. In our specific context, this means that the subject of the declaration is your entire quality management system, including its defined scope and field of application. The benchmark for this declaration remains exactly the same as in traditional certification, the comprehensive requirements of ISO 9001. However, the fundamental shift occurs in where the responsibility is anchored. Under this framework, it is the organization itself that issues the statement rather than an external certification body acting as the issuer. This structure requires 3 binding determinations: a clearly defined subject, the rigorous application of the standard as a benchmark, and a management team that stands behind the declaration with its own signature. It is a powerful move because management responsibility truly begins at the point where quality is no longer simply delegated to a piece of paper on the wall. By using the structure of ISO IEC 17050, you are creating a traceable and responsible statement that proves your system is living and effective. This is not about being less formal, it is about being more accountable. The organization stands with its own name and reputation for the conformity statement, which creates a deep level of integrity within the business and towards your customers. Building on this framework, we need to address the crucial difference between a traditional external certification and a self-declaration. In the classical model, an accredited external body is commissioned to perform an audit and issue a certificate. Here, the responsibility for confirming conformity effectively lies with the external party. When you choose the path of self-declaration, this responsibility visibly and legally shifts back to the organization and its management. Instead of waiting for an external auditor to tell you if you are compliant once a year, the organization takes control through its own conformity assessment. This involves high-quality internal audits, robust evidence gathering, and a continuous review process. It is important to understand that this change in the evidence path does not mean the demands on the quality system are any lower. In fact, the standard basis remains exactly the same: ISO 9001. The difference lies in the logic of responsibility. In certification, you prove it to an outsider. In self-declaration, you prove it to yourselves and your customers by taking ownership of the statement. This shift makes management responsibility far more visible and active. You are no longer just the recipient of a certificate, but the primary source of the conformity claim. This distinction is vital because it changes the internal culture from a mindset of passing the audit to one of managing for excellence every single day, where the evidence is part of your daily operations. This shift in responsibility leads us to an important realization: why a self-declaration is actually more challenging than a standard audit. A robust self-declaration only works if it is built on a foundation of absolute reliability. It is not an easier path or a way to save money on certification fees. Rather, it is a commitment to a higher level of internal rigor. To make this work, 7 critical components must be fulfilled simultaneously. First, you need clear, unambiguous requirements and a precisely defined scope. Then, you must conduct internal audits that are not just a formality, but are truly qualified and critical. These audits must generate documented evidence that is readily available and verifiable. Furthermore, the system must demonstrate effective follow-up measures for any deviations found. A comprehensive management review must then synthesize all this data to ensure the system's health. Finally, the most important element is the clear and active responsibility of management. Without these foundations, a self-declaration is not robust and will not withstand scrutiny from customers or regulators. Each individual component must be demonstrably fulfilled before the leadership can confidently sign the statement of conformity. Essentially, the standard basis of ISO 9001 remains the benchmark, but the path to proving it requires a much more active and visible role for the executive team. Management is no longer delegating quality oversight to external parties, but is actively standing behind the effectiveness of their own business processes and results. Having established that management must actively stand behind their processes, we must now ask who is actually ready for this path. A self-declaration of conformity, according to ISO 17050, is not a universal solution. It is specifically designed for mature management systems. To visualize this, we look at a three-level maturity model. At level 1, a system is merely formally documented. You have your manuals and assigned responsibilities, but this is far from enough for a self-declaration. Level 2 represents a system that is effectively managed. Here, regular internal audits take place, key performance indicators are collected, and corrective actions are consistently implemented. While this is a strong foundation, it is only at level 3, the self-responsible stage, where the self-declaration truly becomes appropriate. At this peak, management does not just receive reports, they actively take responsibility. They possess a robust evidence system and a deep understanding of customer requirements. The principle here is clear. It is not the mere intention to declare conformity that matters, but the demonstrable maturity of the entire management system. You need stable, lived, and traceable processes where responsibilities are not just on paper, but are actively exercised every day. Meaningful management reviews must provide the basis for decision-making, ensuring that every claim made in the declaration is backed by verifiable facts. Transitioning to this level of self-responsibility means quality is no longer a checkbox exercise, but a core strategic driver led from the very top of the organization. It is crucial to be honest about the limitations of this approach, as the self-declaration is certainly not a shortcut for everyone. We must clearly distinguish between a strategic choice and a lack of preparation. If an organization's primary motivation is simply to reduce certification costs or avoid the effort of external audits, they are on the wrong track. A self-declaration requires more internal rigor, not less. There are also hard exclusion criteria. For instance, if your customers or regulatory bodies mandatorily require an accredited certificate, this path is immediately closed. Contractual obligations must be checked thoroughly before making any transition. Beyond external requirements, we must look at the internal foundation. If your internal audits are weak or non-existent, or if your processes are unstable and lack documented evidence, a self-declaration would be groundless and risky. Think of it like a traffic light model. You can only move to green if your processes are demonstrably stable and management is ready to lead. If there is a lack of active management responsibility, the foundation for a reliable declaration is missing entirely. In such cases, the organization is better served by the traditional certification route until the necessary maturity is reached. Remember, a self-declaration is an assertion of excellence and compliance that must withstand the highest level of scrutiny. Without stable foundations and a clear understanding of industry-specific regulatory landscapes, attempting this path could lead to significant reputational and legal risks that no cost saving could ever justify. The shift to a self-declaration marks a fundamental role change for management, moving from being a passive recipient of a certificate to becoming an active provider of conformity. In the traditional model, management often views the certificate as something they receive after an external body has done the heavy lifting of verification. The responsibility for the proof of quality is effectively delegated. However, under ISO 17050, management is visibly and legally responsible. They are the ones declaring conformity and communicating this statement to the outside world. This requires a much deeper level of engagement. To sign that declaration, leadership must truly understand which requirements apply to their business and what specific evidence is available to prove compliance. They must be able to assess risks and interpret internal audit results with a critical eye. It is no longer enough to just know that an audit happened. Management must ensure that all deviations have been addressed and that the declaration of conformity is genuinely justifiable before it is released. Quality is no longer delegated to an external certification body. Instead, it is managed through active leadership, solid evidence, and clear internal decisions. This transition from a recipient mindset to a provider mindset is the hallmark of a mature organization. By standing behind their own business processes and results, management demonstrates a level of confidence and transparency that often carries more weight with sophisticated customers than a standard certificate ever could. It is the ultimate expression of taking ownership of your organization's excellence. Transitioning from the previous focus on mature management ownership, we now look at the engine room of this transition, the internal audit. In a self-declaration framework, internal audits are no longer just a repetitive ritual to prepare for an external visitor. They transform into the central building block of your entire conformity assessment. Think of the audit as a sophisticated funnel that processes various inputs, such as your core business processes, identified risks, specific customer requirements, and the hard data you collect daily as evidence. Instead of merely checking if a document exists on a server, a high-quality internal audit assesses whether these processes are actually effective in the real-world environment of your shop floor or office. It asks the tough questions. Do our people follow the procedures because they make sense or just because they are told to? By analyzing these inputs, the audit generates critical outputs, which include clear findings, identified deviations that need correction, and opportunities for optimization. Ultimately, this rigorous internal examination yields a well-founded conformity statement that gives management the confidence to sign off on the self-declaration. This shift from simple documentation to a deep proof of effectiveness is mandatory for success. When you stand behind your own results, the internal audit becomes your most reliable tool for ensuring that the management system actually works as intended every single day, providing the undeniable evidence required by ISO IEC 17050 to satisfy both internal standards and external stakeholder expectations. Building on the strength of internal audits, we must recognize that maintaining objectivity can sometimes be challenging from within. This leads us directly to the role of external expertise, which remains incredibly valuable even when you aren't seeking a traditional certificate. External experts act as a professional compass, providing the guidance and independent perspective needed to secure your internal findings. Instead of working toward a piece of paper for the wall, this expertise is focused on creating a robust decision-making basis for your leadership team. This support can take many forms, starting with a comprehensive gap analysis to identify where your current system might fall short of ISO 9001 requirements or customer expectations. Independent audits conducted by third-party professionals provide an objective assessment of your conformity without the pressure of a pass-fail certification result. Furthermore, management system reviews and systematic conformity checks help ensure that every gear in your organization is turning correctly. A particularly vital element here is the targeted coaching of senior management. This prepares leaders to understand the technical nuances of the system they are taking responsibility for, ensuring they can explain the why and how behind their self-declaration. In this model, external evaluations actually become more important because they validate the integrity of your internal processes. By using external expertise as a guide, you ensure that your self-declaration isn't just an internal opinion, but a verified high-quality statement backed by professional rigor and deep industry knowledge. While the path to self-declaration offers significant strategic advantages, it is not without its pitfalls, and understanding these risks is essential for a sustainable transition. A self-declaration can fail quite easily if the scope of your system is not defined with absolute precision, as an unclear boundary makes any conformity statement unreliable and potentially misleading to your partners. We also see major risks when there are gaps in evidence. Without solid, accessible documentation of your performance, the entire foundation of the declaration crumbles. Furthermore, a lack of transparent customer communication can lead to a sudden loss of trust if clients feel you are simply trying to save costs by dropping a known certificate. Perhaps most critically, insufficient management evaluation, where leadership fails to stay actively involved in the review process, removes the very control mechanism that makes a self-declaration credible. We must also look at secondary risks like unresolved regulatory obligations or the dangerous misconception that a self-declaration is an exact legal equivalent to an accredited certificate in every single regulated market. Using a proactive risk matrix to evaluate the probability and impact of these factors is mandatory. For instance, high-impact risks like poor audit quality or unclear responsibilities must be managed with specific countermeasures before you ever release a conformity statement. Remember, a self-declaration is not a set-it-and-forget-it document. It requires continuous maintenance and regular updates to remain a credible and professional representation of your commitment to excellence and ISO 9001 compliance. Transitioning from the mitigation of risks, we should now turn our attention to the substantial opportunities that a mature management system can unlock through a professionally prepared self-declaration. When a company reaches a certain level of maturity, the traditional certification routine can sometimes become a repetitive exercise that adds less value over time. By choosing the path of self-declaration according to ISO IEC 17050, you create a stronger focus on actual effectiveness rather than just satisfying an external auditor's checklist. This shift fosters a culture of higher personal responsibility where every team member understands that quality is owned internally. Consequently, we see a significantly better internal audit culture emerging, as these audits are no longer just rehearsals for an external visit, but are viewed as vital tools for genuine improvement. Clearer management responsibility is perhaps the most profound change. Leadership moves from being a passive recipient of a certificate to being the active guarantor of quality. To support this transition, targeted use of external expertise remains a strategic advantage, providing the necessary objective perspective without the rigid constraints of a standard audit cycle. Finally, this approach allows for a more customer-friendly evidence structure. Instead of presenting a single piece of paper, you provide a transparent and detailed look into your processes. This opportunity wheel demonstrates that these 7 strategic advantages do not arise from simply omitting a certificate, but from the inherent maturity of your system, resulting in a professional and credible self-declaration. To achieve these benefits, we follow a clearly defined procedure model, a process plan structured into 7 logical steps. This framework ensures transparency, reduces uncertainty, and secures the necessary handovers until we reach the final stage of customer communication. It begins with step 1, where we check the initial situation to provide a detailed status report on your existing management system and identify specific fields of action. Moving to step 2, we evaluate customer and industry requirements through a comprehensive matrix, ensuring that a self-declaration is indeed the right choice for your market. The third step involves a deep dive into ISO 9001 conformity through a gap analysis, assessing every standard section to ensure nothing is overlooked. Once the gaps are identified, step 4 focuses on establishing a robust audit and evidence system, including audit programs and key figures that make your performance measurable. Step 5 is critical, as we prepare the management team to fully understand their legal and operational responsibilities and refine the communication strategy. Only after these rigorous preparations do we reach step 6, where the formal declaration of conformity according to ISO IEC 17050 is formulated and signed by your leadership. Finally, in step 7, we accompany your customer communication, providing a professional information package that explains the evidence path and builds lasting trust. This structured journey, supported by quality services and WISN GmbH, ensures that every step leads to a result that is both audit-proof and highly professional. Ultimately, this transition offers a profound benefit for both your organization and your customers, leading to more clarity and reliable evidence. When we compare the old world of certification routine with this modern approach, the shift in leadership effect is striking. In the past, many companies found themselves in a recurring cycle of audits that often lacked strategic reflection, leading to a situation where the actual benefit of the certificate was frequently questioned by customers. By moving toward a self-declaration, you replace external dependency with clear internal responsibility. Your customers gain a much more transparent basis for their own decision-making because you are providing them with audit results, key figures, and management reviews that offer real depth. Internal audits gain a new level of quality because they are now the primary instrument for steering the company, rather than just a preparation for an external visitor. This prepared management becomes a visible advocate for quality, turning the management system into an active steering instrument with a sharp focus on customer needs. We are not talking about devaluing certificates in general, but about elevating the quality of evidence. The result is a professional presentation to your clients that demonstrates exactly how you meet requirements. This structured path strengthens the leadership effect and creates a culture where quality is lived every day. It transforms your management system from a documented requirement into a powerful tool for excellence, ensuring that your commitment to ISO 9001 is both visible and verifiable. As we bring our thoughts together, let us look at the core conclusion of this strategic shift. While ISO 9001 certification remains a meaningful and established means of proof for many companies, it is vital to recognize that for mature organizations, self-declaration according to ISO IEC 17050 offers a powerful strategic alternative. The focal point of this entire approach is not simply the removal of a certificate, but the elevation of reliable evidence and lived responsibility. True quality is never the result of a static document hanging on a wall. It arises from visible leadership, proven effectiveness, and the ability to demonstrate conformity at any given moment. This concept is perfectly illustrated by our trust triangle. At its base, we find the ISO 9001 standard as the solid foundation. However, trust only reaches its peak when the two sides, internal audits and evidence combined with management responsibility, work in perfect harmony. In this model, management responsibility begins exactly where quality is no longer delegated to an external certificate. It is about a managed system that relies on traceable evidence and robust internal reviews to drive real improvement. Regardless of the means of proof you choose, your ability to reliably demonstrate that your processes work and meet customer requirements is what defines your success in the market. Maturity means taking full ownership of your quality promise, turning it from a documented requirement into a visible advocate for excellence that your customers can truly rely on because you have the facts to back it up. Now that we have explored the strategic foundation and the benefits of a self-declaration, the next logical question is, how do we get there? It is time to review your current certification strategy and determine if your organization is ready for this more mature path. Quality Services and Wissen GmbH is here to accompany you through every stage of this transition with a clearly structured support path. Our journey begins with a thorough initial analysis of your current state, followed by a detailed evaluation of your system's maturity and potential gaps. We then work closely with you to refine your audit and evidence systems, ensuring they meet the high standards required for a credible self-declaration. This rigorous preparation leads to a formal management decision, the drafting of the self-declaration itself according to ISO IEC 11750, and finally, a professional communication strategy to inform your customers and stakeholders. This path ensures that your transition is not just a change in documentation, but a meaningful strengthening of your leadership impact. We invite you to schedule a strategy meeting with us to discuss your specific goals and evaluate the potential of this path for your business. Remember our guiding formula. Management responsibility begins where quality is no longer delegated to a certificate. Let us work together to transform your management system into a powerful steering instrument that demonstrates your commitment to excellence with total transparency. Reach out to us at info@quality.de or visit our website to take the first step toward a more self-determined quality future.